Hey my dudes, my name is Cecilia and welcome to yet another week in my kitchen here in Stockholm, Sweden. This week we are making one of my favorite things to eat for fika, which is a mazarine. These are like little almond tarts and they have a glaze over the top. They're very plain, very simple, but so delicious. They are exactly what you want to eat with a cup of coffee while reading a book. Like, they are one of the best things you can have for fika. So without further ado, let's just get started. The first step is to make the actual tart shell because it does need time to rest in the refrigerator. We have 2 eggs and we want 1 whole egg and 1 yolk. Put your egg white to the side. We are going to use this for our glaze later. I have here half of a vanilla bean. You could of course use a whole vanilla bean, but you know they're so expensive and this is such a small batch of dough that I don't want to like go super crazy. Like, I can't afford a whole vanilla bean here. If you don't have a whole vanilla bean, you could also use vanilla sugar and save this. You can dry it and grind it and then make vanilla sugar. You can put this directly in sugar and flavor the sugar that way. Or you can pop this and a couple other vanilla bean pods or scraps or whatever in some rum, and then you have your own vanilla extract. So hot tips for you. I'm using my paddle attachment today, and then butter in, powdered sugar and vanilla bean also in, and just a pinch of salt. You can also skip over this, but again, layers of flavor. That's what we're trying to build up here. You want to mix this nice and gently. You don't want to be whipping any air into it, but you just want it to be completely worked out. No chunks of butter, but you don't want to whip it because you don't want to incorporate that much air into it because that air has to go somewhere when it bakes and it's just going to mess up your product. So slow and steady wins the race on this one here. Make sure you're scraping down as you go so that the butter gets evenly incorporated. So my butter is now completely incorporated with my powdered sugar here, and it's really like there's no chunks of butter, but you can see that it's like there's very little air in it. That's what we want. So now I'm gonna pop my eggs in. And again, mix until fully incorporated without adding too much air. So I think that this whole thing is together enough, and I'm just gonna pop all of my flour in at once. Yet again, mixing very gently, and we just want it to start to get sandy. Gentle is the name of the game here. So I like to just finish this last part off with my hand. You just kind of, you're not really kneading it. Again, you're not trying to work the dough. You're just trying to pick up all of that loose flour that's on the bottom of the bowl. Beautiful, look at that. Look at how soft. It's almost like cookie dough-like as opposed to pie dough-like. So soft and lovely, I love it. Love it. Now our dough is all together here and I'm gonna cut it in half. If I was going to make a one tart, then I could leave it all in one, but because I'm gonna be rolling it out, I always wanna have a cool piece of dough, so it's easier to split it up into 2. Take a bit of plastic and you want just like a nice round or rectangular, whatever, a shape. It just needs to be nice and flat and of even thickness. Now, these 2 discs are going to go in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour. We want the butter to cool down and harden slightly, and we also want the flour to relax. So, see these guys in an hour. While we're waiting for our dough to rest, we are going to make our almond filling. I have here some almond flour. I just bought almond flour at the grocery store, but I want to give it a little bit more flavor. You can obviously just use this, but I'm gonna toast it just a little bit just to kind of deepen the flavor. This will go into a 175-degree oven for probably anywhere between like 3 to 5 minutes. So it's been 5 minutes and it's just starting to pick up color on the edge. Give it a quick stir around and pop it in. So after another extra 5 minutes in the oven, it is now this very light goldeny brown, and that's where I want to stop it. Into your stand mixer, with the paddle attachment. All of the butter goes in, all of the sugar, and all of your almond flour. We're gonna mix this together until it is fully incorporated. Our butter is now fully incorporated, so we scrape down the sides, as always. We're gonna add the eggs in one at a time. Both eggs are in and our filling is looking extremely beautiful. I'm now going to add just a pinch of salt. You can skip it if you don't like salt for whatever reason. But again, emphasizing flavors. On that same note of emphasizing flavors, we have almond extract, or really bitter almond aroma, because I'm in Sweden. And if you're in America, you can use regular almond extract because bitter almond is illegal in America. I'm just gonna add a drop or two. That was more like 4 to 5 drops. I really need to get an eyedropper, you guys, but oh well. Our filling is finished. I'm gonna put mine in a piping bag because I like piping bags and I think they're easier to use. If you don't have a piping bag, it doesn't matter. You can just spoon the filling into the tart shells, but since I have piping bags, I'm going to use it. So filling is done. Leave this to the side. You want to pipe room temperature filling because that's easier. Our dough is now cold all the way through, so it is time to actually make our mazarines. This is a box of molds that my grandmother gave me. Both of these are very traditional shapes for mazariner. They can have the fluted edges, but what's most important is that they're a little bit on the deeper side. But like these two are the most traditional. So I think I'm actually gonna go with the ovals today. You don't need a piece of parchment or anything. These can just go directly on there. If I had spray fat, that would be the best because then I could just spray all of these. I do not have spray fat, however, so I just have a little bit of oil and my pastry brush, and I just want to oil these a little bit. And you want a really thin layer. You don't want any like puddles of oil on here. You want to choose a ring mold that has like a lot of air around it. This one is probably like a little bit, actually we're gonna go with this one. It's better to have more around it than less, I feel like. Put your molds to the side, put your ring to the side. You want just a little bit of flour on here, not a lot, but just enough so that the dough doesn't stick. And just start rolling. We want this to be really fairly thin here. Make sure you're basically constantly turning your dough so that it's even all the way through and you know that it's not sticking. Sometimes I also like to put a little bit of flour on top and then flip it over. And I am constantly touching my dough. This is telling me that there's a thick spot over here, that this is starting to has slightly less flour, it's a little bit sticky, so I'm gonna add a little bit more flour, that my edges are the same thickness as my middle, like just touch your dough all the time. All right, I'm gonna stop there, or no I'm not, because it's a little uneven. There we go, and that's gonna be, what is this? Less than 1/4 of an inch? Almost like 1/8 of an inch thick. So quite thin, but not like paper thin, and just start punching out. You do want to work quickly because you don't want this to get too warm. This, how loose it is like already really perfect, but I don't want it to get any warmer. You have your mold. I like to make almost like a little cross, see, like that, and pop it in. And then move the dough out like that so it's even. And now I'm really focusing on getting this bottom corner here and the bottom flat so there's no air pockets. That's when I start to move up the side. Once I know there's no air pockets, that's when I start to move up the side and make it even. Because sometimes these folds here, they make like a thick spot, so I'm just pressing them out so they're not thick anymore. Now I have my mold like this. Now I go around to every single flute and put just like where my knuckle is, because I have small fingers. Maybe if you have bigger fingers, you'd need to use like your pinky, but I have small fingers, so I'm gonna use my index finger. And just go in, and I'm just making sure that there's dough all the way in every single, and I'm not pushing it so that I like cut through the dough or anything. I'm just making sure that the whole flute is filled. There you go, like that. Your scraps of dough, you're gonna pop back in the fridge and take out new cold dough. Make sure you are constantly flouring, just a little bit, but flouring your dough enough so that it never sticks to the table. All of my tart shells are now lined. I have my mini offset. You could also use a butter knife, and you're gonna go at an angle and cut. So I'm using this motion, and I'm cutting down. And that's gonna give me a really nice, clean edge. And it's not about how sharp this edge is, because obviously this edge isn't sharp at all. It's all about the angle that you do it at. Because if I go in like this, I'm gonna cut in, but if I am, see how I'm like flush there? Then it just glides, and I get this really smooth, clean cut. Our tart shells are now ready, and because they're getting filled with our almond filling, we don't need to like prick holes in them or anything. Like, they're ready to go just as they are. Cut a hole in your piping bag, and then you want to fill it, I would say, like 3/4 of the way up. Like that. These now go in the oven at 175 degrees Celsius. It has been about 25 minutes, and these puppies are so ready. Look how adorable they are. Okay, now, very important is to immediately flip them over. So I have a piece of parchment over here, and you're just gonna take your guy and flip it over. Yes, these did just come out of the oven. You have to do this when they are fresh out of the oven, because we want to give them a flat surface. And if you're like, Cecilia, it's hot, I don't wanna do that, you can use your towel, but also, do you know what fingers are for? Fingers are for burning. The more you touch hot things, the less it hurts. Plus, you're touching it so quickly, you don't even feel it. This is how you can tell I worked in a restaurant. What are fingers for? Fingers are for burning, chef. I don't know how many times I have heard that. I have said that. That is very, very restaurant. And now we're gonna let those cool like that upside down until they're in their little tart shells, until they're 100% cool. While we are waiting for them to cool, we are going to start on the glaze. We have our egg white from earlier, and we're gonna use about a tablespoon of water. And I'm gonna start sifting over powdered sugar. It's just a really simple royal icing glaze. You could use just water, but I like to add egg white because it helps it like form more of a skin, basically, over the top. I think it's easiest to add the powdered sugar in additions as well. Then you have more control over how like thick your icing is. All right, so when I stir it, it looks pretty thick, but I think I want it to be even a little bit more. All right, there we go. That's what I want. We have our icing, and these guys are ready to go. And they come out so easily because these molds were well oiled. Amazing. And now they have a nice flat top, flatter, which is what we're looking for. Now, if you want to do these super, super, super simple, you don't want to fuss with the glaze or anything. The bakery I work at, we just take some sugar and dip them in, and they end up looking like this, and they're very glittery, and it's just like a nice little touch on them. But I love glaze. That's why I want to show you guys how to do it. So a nice dollop in the middle, and then I start working it out to the sides. And I'm being really gentle and just really kind of using the icing's own surface tension, and it'll kind of like hit the tart shell and stick to it. And that's when I pull it back again, because I don't want it to drip down. I mean, if you have drips, you have drips. Life happens, but I like them this way. Need a little bit more. I like doing it this way because I think you have more control. If you were to just dip straight in, oftentimes you'll get like little crumbs in the glaze that's gonna be picked up by the next tart, and it just gets kind of messy and not super nice. It's definitely more simple, so if you don't wanna take the time to stand here and carefully glaze each and every one of these, I get that. I mean, honestly, you guys, it does not get cuter than this. This is like peak. But let's see how mine taste. They're so perfect for me. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a little on the plain side, but kind of in the way that a shortbread cookie is plain, right? Like, there's not really that much going on in a shortbread cookie, and yet you're just gonna eat them and eat them and eat them, and they're so good. Same with these guys. They're so good. I love them so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked this week's video. If you did, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Down below in the description, as per usual, is the recipe as well as my Instagram and TikTok handle if you'd like to follow me on there as well. And I hope to see you guys around next week. Hej då!